This podcast is based purely on my personal experiences, observations, and commentary. It's entertainment, that's it. If you're struggling with addiction, mental health issues, homelessness, or any serious life situation, please go get help from real professionals. You know why it's challenging to change? Why shedding those stubborn pounds feels impossible? Or why leaving toxic relationships feels like scaling Everest, or why we work ourselves into the ground, cling to grudges like they're a life raft, struggle to trust anyone, or attempt to micromanage every single details of the lives of our children. It's not because we're dim-witted or because we're lazy or we enjoy being a pain in the ass. It's because change asks us to relinquish the one survival tactic that has until now always felt indispensable. And when you've spent your life gripping reality with white knuckles, being told to let go feels a lot less like freedom and more like being told to jump off a cliff, hoping that something will catch you. Welcome back, survivors. That's all of us. Loud and proud. Today, we're diving into step 3 of the 12-step program, and not just for addicts, but for anyone who's tried tirelessly to control their way of life and found that it's a dead end. Let's explore why that unyielding grip that you can't seem to loosen just might be the barrier standing between you and a peaceful mind, which, you know, unless you're a misanthropic agent of chaos, a Proud Boy or Antifa, I reckon that's probably the ultimate goal of our existence. The thing that makes you feel vibrantly alive can also be the anchor that keeps you from truly living. For you, maybe it's not substances like drugs or alcohol. Maybe it's the relentless grind of work or the chase for perfection. It could be obsessively controlling your diet, or, you know, even the conversations you have, trying to script every word that you say, like I'm doing right now. Or maybe it's the desperate need for everyone's approval, or never saying no to people at work, but always saying no to the things that really matter, your friends, your family, your own self-care. Whatever it is, there's a reason you turn to it, because it worked for you. It wrapped you in a security blanket. It kept you functioning. It prevented you from unraveling. And I thought I was living the high life when I first started experimenting, you know, the joy of floating away from our shared reality. It was liberating, exhilarating even. I believed it was going to usher joy into my life, but it was quietly orchestrating my decline the entire time. So let's unpack what this step truly means, in my opinion, why I resisted it like a rabid raccoon, and why eventually it may just be the most rebellious act of your entire life. First, let's break down the literal wording of step 3. Made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as we understood him. Here's the catch. God. For many of us, that conjures up visions of a bearded guy in the sky who supposedly loves you but allowed unspeakable things to happen to you, or the judgmental figure that your parents invoke to justify their abusive tendencies, or simply a construct used to justify heinous acts like genocide. The world stands back and watch so they don't get tariffed. Maybe you were forced into a residential school, robbed of your very essence, or maybe you just don't think he exists at all. The as we understood him part of it is supposed to smooth things over, but let's cut the crap. If you come with a history of religious trauma, then hearing God flips a switch in your brain that screams fight or flight. Your body doesn't bother with the nuanced debate. It remembers that God is often a convenient excuse for harm. So right from the start, they're asking you to trust something that might be tied to the most painful experiences of your life, which is not great marketing strategy, step 3. Perhaps you grew up in a family that didn't subscribe to any particular religion at all, or has no spiritual practices whatsoever. Which God do you pick? Allah, Shiva, Buddha, Jehovah, the deity of Christianity, Judaism, Mormonism, and more? Your addiction isn't going to hit pause while you conduct a theological study to pick a God. If you're fortunate enough already to have a relationship with a cosmic entity, kudos to you. But what I've realized is the higher power isn't even the point. The spiritual principle driving step 3 is surrender. And surrender is at the heart of it all.
Surrender. Because your way got you here, and here sucks. Available at meetings worldwide. No prescription needed, just desperation and a white flag.
I used to think that surrender was a weakness, that it meant giving up. But it's not about losing. It's about handing over the steering wheel once you've realized that your ego's been driving you around in circles this whole time. When I was homeless, I clung to control like it was oxygen. I would have to decide where to sleep, who I would trust, where, when, if I would eat. And that control kept me alive most of the time, but it also kept me stuck. So when I got to step 3 and heard turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand him, I laughed. I don't understand God. I sure as hell don't trust him. What I did trust, though, were moments. Moments when something, call it coincidence or synchronicity or call it grace, when it would show up just when I would need it. The right person, the right message, the right chance. And they happen all the time if you're paying attention. That's what step 3 became for me. Not some giant, grand religious act, but it was a quiet decision to stop pretending that I had all the answers or any answers, that I needed shiny things to be happy, and that I could let go of anything that didn't add to my peace of mind. And obviously that meant drugs, but it also meant a lot of people. It meant letting go of, the ridiculous image that I was trying to put out there, to let go of anything and everything that wasn't peaceful. So I stopped listening to violent or misogynistic music. I stopped watching violent or movies with drugs in them. I stopped talking to people who my only connection to was through the life. And this isn't because I didn't want to speak to them or because I thought they were bad or I was better. I just had to move on and build a network of support. Now that some time's passed, I'm, 20 months sober at the filming of this. But, I watch scary movies now and I listen to some of my favorite music, but I'm very picky. And if, let's say, the lyrics are something that, my girlfriend, for instance, who I love more than anything, finds offensive, then, I don't care if I agree with her or not. That song gets deleted from my playlist because I just don't want to cause any amount of discomfort to anyone for any reason. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to satirize for educational purposes. I'm just not going to go out there and intentionally hurt people. So yeah, my higher power doesn't have a name. And, it's not the bearded guy in the clouds. It's that feeling I get when I practice the principles, when I stop trying to control everything and start trying to live right. My idea of right for the next 24 hours. And then I start over every day. People love to give names to things that they don't understand. Some call it God. Some call it the universe. Some call it energy. I personally don't call it anything. The feeling I get when I live by the spiritual principles of the 12 steps, that is my higher power. It doesn't have a name and I don't feel like it needs one. It's just the quiet, steady sense that I'm doing the next right thing. The 12 steps aren't just for addicts or alcoholics. If everyone tried to live by these principles, honesty, willingness, surrender, humility, empathy, I'll put them in the description of this episode. The world would be a hell of a lot less selfish, less divided, and less full of hate. You wouldn't be able to throw rocks at your neighbor if you were practicing the steps. You'd be too busy trying not to be a jerk. And that's really all the steps ask of you, to try. Progress, not perfection. A little less ego every day. A little more awareness before you open your mouth. Think before you speak. Listen before you react. Try to see someone else's pain before you judge them for it. I used to think surrender was a weakness, that letting go meant giving up. But it's not about losing. It's about handing over the steering wheel when you finally realize that your ego's been driving you around in circles. Here's the mind-boggling part. The harder you try to control everything, the less control you have. There's a psychological principle called the ironic process theory. In simple terms, the more you try not to think about something, the more it consumes your thoughts. You tell yourself, don't think about purple dinosaurs, and suddenly Barney's the only thing your brain can latch onto. And it's similar with control. The more desperately you try to grasp it over your life, your feelings, how others react, the more you invite chaos in. Life is inherently uncontrollable, and you're waging a war you cannot win. I learned this the hard way on the streets. I had to project control every second of every day, at least in the confines of my immediate surroundings. Convincing anyone that I had command over my life as a whole, that was another story. But I could control who and what I allowed in my bubble. Who I choose to help, who I don't, who I cared about, and who I definitely did not. Yep. That grip on control kept me alive. I am not being dramatic. My hypervigilance, my refusal to trust anyone, well, hardly anyone, my constant scanning for threats, that survival instinct saved my life more than I care to count. And so when a well-meaning soul, and let's imagine they're in a church basement, tells you to let go and let God, what they're really asking is surrender the very survival mechanism that has kept you breathing or gotten you where you are in your career. No wonder I resisted it tooth and nail. No wonder you're resisting it. If the traditional God narrative doesn't resonate with you, then what on earth is the higher power supposed to be? Here's the realization that I've found so hard to wrap my head around. A higher power is anything larger than you, your own ego, your fears, or your desperate need to control every little detail. It could be nature. It could be the laws of physics. It could be human connection. It can be love. It could be the statistical reality that the universe has been spinning for 13.8 billion years, doing its thing irrespective of whether you're fretting about it or not. Our problems that feel so crushing that we can't even breathe mean very, very little in the grand scheme of eternity. The specific what isn't nearly as significant as the principle. You are not the center of the universe. Your perspective is limited, and maybe there are forces at play that you can't see or comprehend. I began to notice patterns, how random people would appear precisely when I needed them, how opportunities would materialize just when I was ready for them and not before, and how the most challenging chapters of my life somehow paved the way for my best ones, but only in retrospect. Whether you credit it to God, the universe, or just your brain's knack for spotting patterns, it doesn't really matter. What's essential is acknowledging that you're part of something much greater than your own individual self. Everything is intertwined in ways that completely baffle our tiny little human minds. We are bald monkeys who drive cars. It's really very dangerous. That's all we are. So yes, there is something bigger than you. Call it what you will. The point is, you're not in charge of everything, and that's actually a relief. I'm really relieved that you're not in charge of everything. Now, knowing all this in theory and actually executing step 3 are two entirely different beasts. I knew I couldn't control everything, and I recognized that my way wasn't working for decades, honestly, and I understood I needed help. But surrender, and here's why I resisted. One, because many times when I trusted someone or something in the past, I got burned. Teachers, social workers, lawyers, romantic partners, the system. When I placed my faith in something outside of myself, it let me down. I also let everyone in my life down, but that's for the next step. So why on earth would I put my trust in some invisible cosmic force? Well, let's unpack everything I've said so far. It was people who let me down. But that unseen force, the one that kept popping up just when I needed it, or always seemed to guide me back to where I needed to be, not so much. But if I let go of control, who was I? My entire identity was stitched together by being independent, self-sufficient. Surrender felt like waving a white flag and admitting I was weak. Let's take a hard look at that now. If I needed help, which was often, I called my mom. I wasn't tough. I wasn't independent. I wasn't self-sufficient. I slept outdoors. My diet was 5-cent candies. I was unceremoniously dumped out of a dumpster into a garbage truck because I was hiding from imaginary threats, and I passed out. I never had control over anything. But the religious trauma was real. I couldn't disentangle higher power from the God who lets children die while narcissistic degenerates rule the world. Every time someone uttered, "God has a plan," I wanted to scream, "Well, then God's plan sucks." And surrender felt like I was admitting defeat. But I was defeated. My trust was shattered. I'd survived by not relying on anyone but my family. Religion terrified me, and like everything touched by human hands, it felt, and it still feels, deeply flawed to me. Power hungry, manipulative, much like any corporation. And in many ways, my ego is what kept me alive. So what changed? For me, it was, hitting a wall so hard that I really had no other option. I tried everything else. I'd attempted to control my using, control my behavior, my feelings, my relationships, and it all blew up. There's a saying in recover, my best thinking got me here. And here was a special kind of hell. I was lying in a hospital bed, utterly shattered, and I realized I literally can't do this anymore. Not, I don't want to, but physically, mentally, emotionally, cannot continue this way. The program asks you to let all of that go, but it doesn't acknowledge how terrifying that is for someone with real trauma. What finally nudged me over the higher power hump was the sheer luck of being in a program that incorporated some spiritual teachings of the Cree people. 4-directional healing, wellbriety, which is AA, tailored to their culture. I sat in ceremony and had an epiphany. Creator and God are the same force, the yin, the yang, and those moments of light, that universal communication, they're scarce, but incredibly potent beacons of warmth in a largely cold and void universe. And to be that light and not just observe it, I realized one day as the smudge smoke morphed into a ram, a symbol of awakening, repentance, power, and spiritual strength, I thought of the 12 steps. And then I recalled the spiritual principles that I had scribbled into the front of every single, big book or NA book over the years that I'd ever had, and realized it's all right there in how it works. In that moment, I didn't find God. I didn't have some earth-shattering spiritual awakening. I just stopped fighting and realized how simple it is. It's far from easy, but the program is as straightforward as it gets. I was in a shabby old garage filled with old carpet, flickering fluorescent lights, and a whiteboard. If I could find my higher power in there, you can find him anywhere. You can find it anywhere. I don't know why I say him. I don't mean anything by it. It's definitely not a gender thing. It's how I was raised. I'm trying to fix it, but it's in it. Surrender isn't about giving up. Surrender is about giving over. Giving up is hopeless. Giving over is admitting, I can't do this alone, and I'm ready to accept help from something greater than my own fractured thinking. And that something greater, it doesn't have to be God. It can be the collective wisdom of those who've walked your path, the proven effectiveness of certain principles and practices, the reality that billions of people have endured worse than you and have still found meaning in life. It doesn't even have to be the 12 steps. The simple fact is that your current method isn't working. So literally anything else is worth a shot. For me, my higher power became the impenetrable armor forged from practicing, doing my best to uphold these principles, not inflict harm on anyone else, and to try to mend the wounds that I've caused in my life, and to leave this world a better place than it was when I got here. And, what a strange place it is. So here's what step 3 looks like in practice once you cut through all the metaphysical nonsense. In the morning, instead of white-knuckling your way through the day, you recognize that you have no clue what's going to unfold, and that's okay. You ask for help from whatever you call your higher power, from your support network, from your better judgment. When you feel that itch to control something, you can't. Another person's behavior, a work situation, whether someone digs you, you acknowledge it and let it slide. Not because you're weak, but because battling reality is exhausting and it's utterly pointless. At the end of the day, you reflect without judgment. What worked? What didn't? Where did you try to play God? Where did you trust the process? You thank whatever you got through another day, sober, clean, and alive. It's not dramatic. It's not mystical. It's just easier. Surrender isn't about becoming powerless. It's about recognizing what you have power over. Your actions, your reactions, your choices, and realizing what you don't have any control over whatsoever, which is basically everything else. You still show up, you still do your work, you still make decisions, you just stop pretending that you can dictate the outcomes and stop reacting as if unwelcome outcomes are some kind of personal assault. And strangely enough, that's when things start to fall into place. Not because some cosmic force is rewarding you or choosing not to zap you with a lightning bolt, but because you're finally working with reality instead of against it. I still wrestle with this. There are days when I snatch my will and my life back, and it's not because I think that I can manage it better than the universe can. I just forget that I'm not supposed to be micromanaging things. And guess what happens? I immediately create a mess. I start an argument, I hurt someone's feelings, I do something stupid. And so I keep practicing. I keep progressing without expecting perfection. And I keep surrendering every day. I keep trusting that I don't have to figure everything out alone. I don't even have to figure everything out. I just need to live in peace and let everyone else do the same. So today, I personally have very little in the way of material possessions. I have a gifted computer, a gifted microphone, a gifted green screen, and 3 lights. And I have a credit card and, a 7-year-old iPhone. Enough clothes to fill 3 drawers and shirts hanging in a closet. A family that takes pride in me, and a girlfriend, well, a woman friend, but that sounds weird, who's patient, generous, and my biggest fan. In 18 months, my life is transformed from absolute misery to the happiest I've ever been. And I know that I can help others reach that place too. But I need to get my words out there so that the people who need to hear them, hear them. So if anything I said today struck a chord or might help someone else, addicted or not, the steps are a universal tool, I think. Happy, well-adjusted people are implementing them without even realizing that they're doing it. please spread the word. Visit my channel or my website at www.loudnessmcevil.com, or tune into my podcast, the Loudness McEvil Symposium, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast fix. And that's it for today. Let go, connect, step outside, and meet some real flesh and blood people.